Welcome, everybody, to a very special episode of AppStories. This is our day 2 of recording at WWDC. This episode is brought to you by SetApp, our WWDC sponsor. I'm here with Federico, of course, our editor-in-chief, and Alex Guillot. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
All right, everybody. We are here today with Serhii Popov from MacPaw, who is MacPaw is our sponsor for WWDC this year, and we wanted to get the perspective of one of the developers who was fortunate enough to get one of the tickets to attend the various events both yesterday and today. Well, welcome to AppStories, Serhii.
Thank you, guys. Thank you a lot for inviting me. I'm really proud to be here.
Yeah, so give us an idea of what your last couple of days have been like. What have you been up to since you arrived in California?
For me, it is the first time in California, in the United States, in Cupertino, at Apple, at WWDC. So many things that are at first for me. So these a few days that I'm here, I'm just walking around, really with eyes like that, very big. Amazed by everything I see, and only positive emotions and impressions are here for me.
It was my first time for me yesterday at Apple Park too, and I keep thinking that it kind of looks fake in a good way. Like it looks impossible as a building that could have been like built there. And just I gotta say, like I went as press, but we were fortunate enough to just chat with developers and just hang out with developers at the Apple Design Awards, and the energy that was there, right? The sort of very positive, exciting environment. I don't know if you got that from the event, but it's like after all these years, for me personally, it was like my first event in 4 years. It felt very nice to be surrounded by people in our community again.
Actually, yeah, it is. And all the Apple staff were, I don't know, super supportive, super energetic, super positive. And they really celebrated this event like first in years after the COVID began, where we could finally meet everyone here offline and just, do the favorite thing we all love, like to meet, know the latest updates, try it out, play, communicate, and tell our stories, share ideas, and something like that. It's amazing. And I was lucky to get into the first Apple campus, which is on One Infinite Loop. I was so impressed to see a building where Steve worked before, and I asked an Apple employee about that, is it real? Did Steve really work here? And say, oh yeah. He did his job in that building on the opposite side. Was, oh my goodness. And Apple Park is enormous building, like the Ring building itself, but it's not even a half of the whole territory. It's a little bit less than half of the whole territory, but it took 20 minutes to walk around the whole building. Amazing.
Yeah, it's really impressive when you're there, and it's just like everything from the giant trees growing in Cafe Max to the curvature of all the staircases and the roof lines and everything. It's really, really neat. So you got to sit with all the other developers during the keynote. Federico and I were back with the press. What was it like sitting with the developers? What was kind of the mood of you and your fellow developers during the keynote?
Yeah, it was amazing, to see actually developer from app you're using day to day in your life, and to see the real people who made it. I've personally met a developer who of the app. Well, he's a developer and also a founder of that app. It was awarded for Apple Design Awards. But he told me I developed an app. It does this and that. I felt oh, cool, pretty cool. And then I found out that it was nominated for Design Awards, and I was like, what? Really? Oh my God, it's so amazing app, and yeah, it's really cool. He was just sitting next to me.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite part of the keynote? What impressed you the most?
As a user, definitely Vision Pro. I guess how the majority of of us very impressed by this wonderful piece of tech. More impressive was when I just saw it in real life in a Steve Jobs theater. It looked even better than on renders. It's, I don't know, so ergonomic, pretty much of glass, curves, very beautiful. And as a developer, I was really, really glad to be on the State of the Union when Apple announced pretty good improvements to Swift and Swift UI, and especially a modern replacement for core data, which is now called Swift data. Fellow developers who work with core data, I think, will understand me, because the previous way, like Apple way to manage data, was pretty legacy, and now it's super slick.
Do you think that's have you seen any technologies already that maybe you will be able to implement in setup in the near term? Like, is there anything, for example, Swift data? Do you think that's something that you can use for setup?
I'm pretty sure we will. At least I will ask very much my colleagues to do that, because at setup we are really lucky to be able to use the latest technologies, because we're raising regularly the minimum deployment target for our main application. And we've already been using a Swift UI for UI things, for the new parts, I mean. We have still some legacy from Objective-C, and core data is one of that parts. And I will be thrilled to try the new Swift data to simplify our life.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things over the years about core data and how difficult it is to use for developers. So I think that'll hopefully open up that technology to a lot more developers who may have tried core data in the past and found it too confusing or too hard to use for their apps.
And with a core data approach, you still had to do many manual stuff and have at least two model descriptions, two separate files to describe your data structures. And there could be something that could go wrong, actually, many times, and it was really hard to explore and find a place where something went wrong, because there were no warnings all in runtime, and you just got the weird crashes reported in your crash reporting tool, and you have no idea where to start searching.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Well, Serhii, I want to thank you for joining us on the show today. It's been really nice to meet you. I mean, I have known some of your colleagues at MacPaw before, and still know them, and it's a great group of people. But I never really met any of your developers, I don't think. So it's really nice to get to know you and hear a little bit about your story. And it's neat that this is your first time here too, not just at WWDC, but to California. So thanks for being on the show with us today.
Thank you too, guys. Really excited and happy to be here. Thanks.
Let's get right into things, all right? So I have iOS 17 on my phone, on my main phone, which may sound like a wild plan, but things will be more clear later this afternoon, okay? Why I did it. And I also have iPadOS 17 on my iPad Pro, on the big boy, on the 12.9. And I have the 11-inch one still on the stable release. What about you guys? Do you have the betas anywhere?
I do. I've got the beta on my 12.9-inch iPad Pro. I haven't done my phone yet, mostly because I left my charger in the car last night and was too tired to go get it.
You keep losing things. You lost your baseball cap. You lost your charger. Are you just dropping things all over Cupertino?
I am. I dropped my phone at the keynote. I don't think you noticed, but I actually did drop it on the ground in the grass. But I recovered it. No, it's my phone was too low on battery to actually install a beta this morning, but it's charging now, and I'm going to install it right when we're finished here.
All right. Well, Alex, do you have any betas at the moment?
Nah, I'm not as daring. I haven't gotten it running on anything yet, but I'm letting you two pave the way, and once you tell me that everything didn't melt down, I'll follow your lead.
Interesting. Have you lost anything, like John? Have you dropped anything?
No, surprisingly, no losses for me, although we are doing everything from my hotel room, so I guess if I dropped anything, it would be here.
Also, I just wanted to confirm for the very first time I'm doing a WWDC where I'm not sharing a room with Mike Hurley, and surprise, nothing has disappeared.
However, my hat did disappear, so it could have been Mike. Could have been Mike when I wasn't looking, because he was sitting right near me at the restaurant the other night.
Wow, he just needs to take something from someone at some point during WWDC. All right, so I want to talk about Stage Manager. All right, so this is the thing that I really wanted to have this year. Like I was both hoping to get Stage Manager fixes, but I was also kind of dreading the idea of it's just going to be another multitasking interface that receives no updates for the next couple of years. And what we got is a refinement of last year's Stage Manager. And from a couple little birdies, it sounds like we're going to get a couple more maybe refinements through the course of the summer. So I feel pretty optimistic right now in terms of what to expect for Stage Manager on iPadOS. I'm referring to iPadOS. So I put it on my iPad last night, and there's 3 things I want to talk about. The resizing of the windows, the placement of the windows, and the keyboard shortcuts. And I want to start from the keyboard shortcuts. So you've long been able with Stage Manager on the Mac to shift-click a window thumbnail in the strip to add that window to the current workspace. Now, that's also supported on iPadOS, and it's become more consistent almost everywhere. Meaning, in iPadOS 17 Beta 1, you can shift-click a window thumbnail in the strip, an icon in the dock, or, and this is new, I discovered this last night, you can shift-click an app in the app library to add it to the current workspace. Right? So when you hold down Shift and you click, the selected item gets added to the current workspace right away. It sounds like, and I was having this conversation on Twitter with Chris Lawley, it sounds like there's a different keyboard shortcut for Spotlight, but it's not working for me. And so essentially, I think you can press Function Control Up to add. I know it's weird. John is making a weird face, and yes, that was also my curious face. It sounds like there's a separate shortcut for adding an app result from Spotlight to a workspace, but it's not working for me. And so my feedback to the right people immediately was I should also be able to shift-click an app result in Spotlight and add the app from search results to my workspace.
Yeah, I really don't think that those should be different shortcuts, because it's really a very similar interaction. I actually want to back up just 1 second, Federico, and big picture, and think a little bit about what it would have been like if we hadn't gotten these improvements. Because one thing that struck me about Vision Pro was that we didn't get what we kind of assumed might be the case, which is kind of a UI that was based on Stage Manager in the headset. And I think if we had come out of the keynote without that kind of UI on the headset and no improvements on the iPad or the Mac, that it would have been even more disappointing. But it's really, I'm really happy to see that Apple took the time to work on Stage Manager on the iPad in particular, even though it wasn't part of like a bigger picture, big item like the headset.
Yeah, I think what we've seen from Apple in recent years is that they like to have consistency, right? When you move from one computer to another, there are differences in UI, there are differences in interaction, how things look, how things behave, but you can always tell, oh, this is Notes, or oh, this is Reminders, or this is Safari. And so those apps will look different on Vision Pro. The multitasking interface is not Stage Manager for what we know. It's not called Stage Manager, but you can tell, obviously, that it was made by the same company. You can tell that like they've sort of they have been getting us used to maybe this idea of these 2D planes, which are the windows, and these slightly more 3D-ish thumbnails on the side.
Yeah, there's definitely a resemblance there. I definitely noticed that in terms of having those sideways windows and things like you do on Stage Manager. But in terms of the way it functions, it does feel very different on Vision Pro. Although obviously haven't tried it yet, so I guess it remains to be seen.
You can also see like there's some small design things that they've clearly taken from Stage Manager, like the drag handles on the corners are taken directly out of Stage Manager. The whole way the windows are rounded are from the Stage Manager way of doing windows rather than from the Mac, which is where most of us are more familiar with window management. So it does seem like a mixture, but clearly the resizing is a lot more freeform in Vision Pro. Although Stage Manager, I think, and Federico can tell us about this, I think it's gotten better, but still seems like maybe it kind of blinks the page as it changes, I think. But yeah, maybe tell us how that's improved this year.
Yeah, so that's a great point about the resize handles. That is absolutely true. So the second point in my list for Stage Manager was the sort of almost freeform resizing, which I think I've used it a bit more compared to yesterday. So the best way I can put it is there's more. It's almost like there's more intermediate steps in between the size classes. It's still using size classes and it still kind of blinks, but I think it does it better than iPadOS 16. And it's almost like there's more steps in between the different size classes that you can resize a window to. I don't know how they did it, but I mean, you can test it and it looks better and it feels better. And there's always going to be like the minimum size a window should be. Like you cannot go smaller than, say, an iPhone window. Like, for example, the Apple Music window, you cannot make it smaller than an iPhone-sized Apple Music window. But it's still, and I mean, it's also beta 1, so things may get better or worse if it's like last year. I don't want to make any announcements about that right now. But right now, it feels like yesterday I called it like as a denser rail-based system, and it feels like that. Like it feels like there's still some sort of guidance underneath, but you have more options.
Okay, so they're definitely still working within kind of the same system, but they've at least made improvements on it. But there's no, I feel like what we're all kind of hoping for eventually is just, clean window resizing like you get on the Mac where you don't see blinking. But, this is definitely, I feel like the blinking is the worst little aspect that they still need to fix. But I bet they can fix that because, a rail-based system isn't completely new on the Mac either. There's certain apps like Terminal, for instance, still jumps by a full character width. You can't resize that to any degree, so that's not absolutely unheard of. I think it's more just can they smooth it out going forward at some point so that we don't even see blinking, and then you can have more of the illusion that you're resizing it to any portion than you quite do right now, but still seems like really good step forward for year over year, especially when they didn't really even talk about it in the keynote. So I was pretty nervous that they did nothing. So this seems like they did some really nice changes anyway, which is good to see.
Yeah, they didn't mention it at all, and we had to go to the product page, which, by the way, the product pages, I don't know if you saw, John, but they used to do, in years prior, they used to have like iOS 16 preview, iPadOS 16 preview, the main page, and then either down at the bottom or at the top, like see all features. And that took you to a sub page with a list of all the new features. And now both iOS 17 and iPadOS 17 are single pages. There's no see all features, I guess, because a single page is enough to contain all the features. I'm guessing like they're relatively small updates, which I'm super happy to see because once again, I should be able to go back to the annual tradition of iOS and iPadOS review all in one. But yeah, there's smaller pages this year. So the third point on my list was the window placement of Stage Manager. And that's the thing that is making me really happy right now. So hinted this on the show yesterday. I brought with me the C-Force external display, the one that typically I use with the Nintendo Switch when I want to play Nintendo Switch games in bed. And the C-Force display, I connected it last night to my iPad Pro with a USB-C cable. And a couple of things I noticed right away. Stage Manager picked it up immediately. In settings, there's a new design for switching between no multitasking You can do that. You can use an iPad without split view, even just full screen all the time, like iPadOS. Well, it wasn't called iPadOS. It was called what was it? iOS 3.2. Was that the first version? Yeah. So you can use an iPad in full screen. You can use an iPad in split view, slide over, or use Stage Manager. And there's a new UI for picking one of the three. But then I started dragging windows from the iPad to the external display, and finally you can truly place windows again almost everywhere you want. Again, the same conversation applies here. They're still underneath a rail-based system, but it's better than last year. You have a lot more options in terms of placement. The system is not nearly as aggressive as it used to be in terms of magnetically sort of attaching a window to another one and trying to organize the workspace for you. And I'm going to use a practical example that I think I will post on Mastodon or use in an article. I took a window from my RSS reader and I made it pretty big on the external display. And I put it on the left side. Then I took a music window and I made it super small, and I tried dragging it to the right side. This was like an iPhone-sized window. Typically, with Stage Manager, like until last year, that tiny window, the system wouldn't let you make it float there on the right side. It would take the window and be like, nope, I'm gonna snap it right next to the big one in the center of the screen. Now, in 17, that tiny window stays there in the bottom right corner, which we were joking about it today, like, what a concept, right? that you take a small window and it stays where you want it to be. But hey, small victories, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing that I'm looking forward to trying, which unfortunately you can't try with your C-Force, is what the external display camera use is like, because that's another thing coming to the iPad, which I'm really looking forward to giving it a shot. I mean, I don't use FaceTime camera a lot, but it is handy to have. And when you're using an iPad and you're sitting at a desk with an external display right in front of you and the iPad probably off to the side, it makes a lot of sense to be able to use that camera that's in the display that is the main one you're looking at. So it's a nice update so far. I mean, it's nice to hear that there are other ideas and concepts that are being considered for further down in the beta period. And, the keyboard shortcuts are not quite 100% there yet. But as Federico said, it's beta 1. And for a beta 1, I think it's a pretty good start.
Yeah. So that's I'm gonna try and use Stage Manager now. And the other thing I wanted to talk about briefly is exactly what Naline is pointing out in Discord. USB webcams should now work on iPadOS as well. Now, there's going to be a session about this later this week. I think it's in a couple of days. I think it's on Friday maybe, or on Thursday. So in theory, any USB webcam that you plug into your iPad Pro running iPadOS 17 should be recognized by the system. And in theory, there should be support for video and audio routing when you're using an iPad Pro with an external display and an external webcam plugged into your iPad. Now, the details so far are pretty non-existent. I saw that there's a new media extension framework in developer documentation that's, however, not related to what I'm referring to. I think it's about video codecs that developers can now do. But there's a session on the developer app and website that mentions video and audio routing when you use an external webcam and external USB-C microphones. However, I tried yesterday. I tried plugging Alex's microphone into my iPad Pro and nothing happened. Like there was no new design in the settings page. There was nothing new or different in Control Center. It just saw the USB microphone. So I'm guessing that it's maybe something that developers need to specifically optimize for and implement in their apps. Yeah. So I don't know how that's gonna work, but I'm keen to go back home and take my Logitech webcam, plug it into my iPad Pro, and see what happens.
Yeah, this kind of stuff is the kind of stuff we do all summer long, is just finding as many of these kind of USB peripherals and seeing maybe if some of them just have the built-in support for this kind of thing that don't require either a special API or a special driver or something. But it does sound, I think, Federico, like you said, that this may be, instead of something built into system settings, it could be something that's built on a per app basis, I guess.
Yeah, so that's Stage Manager.
This episode of AppStories is brought to you by SetApp. SetApp is the first subscription-based service for macOS, iOS, and web apps developed by MacPaw and released in 2017 that offers developers a source of predictable monthly revenue and seamless user experiences with commissions as low as 10%. SetApp is an efficient way to distribute macOS, iOS, and web apps. And your users will get hassle-free access to powerful apps with no ads or hidden fees. Developers get an additional way to sell their apps, too. SetApp has everything from design solutions and software development tools to photo editing. SetApp has over 240 macOS, iOS, and web apps for its users, and new apps are being added all the time. The SetApp team takes care of everything from payments and update mechanisms to content marketing and helpful support that helps developers work independently and adopt their subscription model hassle-free. Also, SetApp's rating and review feature allows developers to gather valuable feedback from users, bringing their products to the next level. SetApp shares 70% of each user's fee among the developers of the applications that a particular customer uses. In other words, SetApp calculates developers' share of profits per user separately. On top of the 70%, SetApp gives a guaranteed 20% of a user fee to the partner who brought this particular user. To sum up, SetApp vendors may receive up to 90% of the revenue from a user's fee every month. SetApp is a strong network of software consumers waiting for the next iOS, macOS, or web app to power their projects. Looking for a new audience for your product? Join SetApp and bring your product to new users directly. Grow your app with SetApp by visiting setapp.com/developers today to learn more and sign up. Again, that URL is setapp.com/developers. There'll be a link in the show notes too. Our thanks to SetApp for their support of the show.
Before we do some Q&A, I wanted to talk briefly about Notes. Have you tried Notes on your phone, John?
I have just a little bit because I put 17 on my iPad this morning, and you had put together some notes for us, and I was looking at those, and I like what I'm seeing. I mean, it's really become, it's that and reminders are like these twins that have grown up a lot over the last 3 or 4 years to become much more fully featured apps. You've got the ability to, as you and I were talking about this morning, to do hyperlinks now. You can also open notes in a Pages document. We haven't tried that yet. It's unclear to me whether that means they're just format compatible or whether you're converting it into a Pages document and using Notes as a starter place, like a template or something. But there's a lot of neat little features in there. And I think the biggest one that we had been talking about for a long time is linking. And this is not the same kind of linking you'd find in an app like Obsidian, for instance, or Roam Research. It's one-way linking. It's basically like you can create a table of contents and link to other notes in the notes you're working in. Now, you could then go to that secondary note and create a link back to your original table of contents note, but it's not automatic in the same way that Obsidian is. But it's a really good start. I think it really is the kind of feature, I think it's a very Apple approach to it, which is this is probably all that most people need, is that maybe they've got a really big project and they've got 5 or 6 notes that are all related to the same topic, and they want to have a way to link them together so that it's easy to navigate from one to the next.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that they haven't done backlinking. I can imagine that convincing the Notes product managers to do internal linking was enough of a task for a lot of engineers. But I mean, it's pretty wild that you now have in Notes this comprehensive sort of add link menu that you can bring up by hitting Command K on your keyboard, as always, as you've been able to do on the Mac forever.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how much of it was just when they built in the Pages integration. Pages has some features that Notes didn't have, including external links. And I'm kind of wondering, was this the Notes team trying to, add linking into Notes, or was it just like, okay, today or this year we're going to integrate with Pages, and therefore one of the features that's on the list is adding links into Notes. So that could maybe explain why they did it in a way that doesn't involve backlinks or anything like that. But we can still hope for a future where they let us turn it into a more interconnected system. But this is definitely a good start, and good to see the Notes team still moving forward.
So yeah, the Notes team has been busy this year between this new internal linking, the new insert menu. You can now turn blocks of text into block quotes, which I use today. It's pretty nice. And the Pages integration and the new PDF integration, where you can have PDF documents inside Notes, and you have this new menu for navigating between documents. I'm really happy to see Notes reminders sort of moving in lockstep in terms of these apps that have a massive user base. Slowly adopting these previously sort of geeky features and turning them into more mainstream functionalities that a lot of people can take advantage of.
Yeah, I think back to the days when we had rumors that iOS was going to get preview. You remember those, Federico? That we were going to see preview, and we effectively have preview now. It's just that it's done in, I think, a much more user-friendly way inside of Notes, because you've got things like signatures and fillable PDFs and all kinds of annotation tools. It's really all the tools basically that are in preview are there, at least when it comes to PDF. So I think that's going to be a great tool, especially for anyone who does a lot of research in PDFs, whether you're a student or have a profession where you deal with PDFs a lot. Being able to have multiple PDFs in a Note and make annotations on the PDFs, but also take notes alongside the PDFs is a really powerful thing that is probably one of the biggest additions, I think, this year.
Yeah, and someone asked about the new reminders features, and I kind of wanted to mention it right away. I have played around very briefly with the new reminders. It lets you create sections in lists. It's kind of like the Things app or Todoist. You can organize a list in multiple sections. So like, for example, in my MacStories list, I can have email and then articles, and those are two separate sections. And then you can choose on the iPad, and I assume on the Mac, but I haven't put the beta on my Mac. You can choose to display those sections as columns, and that's basically a Kanban board. And that, again, Apple is never going to call it a Kanban board, but that's what they do here. They listen to feedback from power users, and they understand the core of the idea that they want, and they turn that into like something that a lot of people can take advantage of without the terminology, without the technical jargon that all of that typically requires. So I'm gonna do the thing again where I switch to reminders as my task manager this summer, and it's a never-ending cycle of jumping back and forth between task managers. But I think at this point, I gotta be honest, like columns, and I'm pretty sure I'm on the record with this on AppStories a few months ago. I said, if they give me column view, I will go back to reminders. So I said it months ago, and I will keep my promise.
Yeah, I'm going to give this a try too. One of the main reasons that I really like using Notion for setting up kind of the more complicated developer-focused task list is that Kanban board view. And I don't really use Kanban boards to like a crazy degree. I just really like the columns, and it's super nice to be able to move your task from one column to the next as it goes through a certain set of status changes. So that is really good to see, and I'm excited to give that a try in reminders too, and see. Sometimes Apple's first stab at these is a little too simplified. So we'll see if it's like that, or if it's good enough for us to move some of our Notion stuff back over there.
Alex, late yesterday, you wrote a story about StandBy, and I was pleasantly surprised by that one at the keynote yesterday. What all are we getting with StandBy?
Yeah, so StandBy, if anyone has been using the Apple Watch nightstand mode, then they know exactly what StandBy is. It's taken that feature and moved it to the iPhone basically, but then also expanded it a little bit. So, nightstand mode on the Apple Watch has been around since watchOS 2, which was pretty wild to look back. Yeah, I went back all the way to my very first iOS or watchOS review for watchOS 2. And which, if everyone remembers, came out like 3 months after watchOS 1. So watchOS 2 was basically watchOS 1. But they had nightstand mode there. And I mean, I have used this feature basically every single day for the last 8 years. I really, really like this feature on the Apple Watch. It's basically when you drop your watch sideways into a charger, which a lot of chargers now are designed to hold it sideways like that. Then you can you get this display that is green text on a dark background, and it's really dim, and you can use it in the middle of the night to see what the time is really quick, and it turns on if you just bump your nightstand. So you just kind of give it, like I've gotten used to just giving my nightstand a little tap, and my watch display lights up.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is I wonder whether this feature is in part driven by the fact that more people are using their watches for sleep tracking now, so they can't use nightstand mode.
Ooh, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. But that actually makes a lot of sense. And I've thought about that in the past when I have occasionally tried to use my watch for that, is that I'll turn around and bump my nightstand and be like, what's going on? And I mean, I guess you can still look at your watch if it's on your wrist then, but I don't know. I really like the nightstand mode setup. And it's cool that they brought it to iPhone now too. But the reason they didn't call it nightstand mode for the iPhone is because they've expanded it a little bit. So they're looking to increase the number of use cases that it's useful for, including putting it basically as a kitchen computer, or they mention on your desk or in the living room too. But now that we have these MagSafe stands on the iPhone, you can actually, hook your iPhone into the stand sideways, and it will now in iOS 17 do basically the same thing as the watch nightstand mode, where you'll get this full screen display that shows the clock and maybe a few other small pieces of information like the day or the current temperature. And if you have any alarms set. So by default, it looks just like the Apple Watch standby mode, but you can also swipe up on that display to switch the full interface. So you can get all kinds of colorful interfaces that show the clock in a little bit of a more fun way. And, those obviously you're probably not going to want on in the middle of the night. But if you're using your iPhone, on a countertop somewhere or on your desk, then you might want it to be a little more fun if it's during the day. You can also swipe to the side, though, and turn it into basically a digital picture frame. So it'll just kind of cycle through all of your photos from your library. And then the kind of most interesting, I think, aspect of this is you can set it up to show 2 different stacks of widgets. And then, so one will take up one half, one will take up the other. And then you can swipe on those widget stacks to switch between various widgets. And so they showed an example of having the Home app widget on there. And you can basically turn your iPhone into a little Home app controller and just walk by it, in the living room or wherever, and tap on the buttons there and set up your lighting how you want it. So I think that's really useful. It obviously has Hey Siri support, so you can use it as a kitchen timer or whatever. And so it's basically going to come in and try to take on, I think, the Amazon Echo Show and those things. The one thing that I felt like was the elephant in the room here was, how is this feature not on the iPad? It's launching only on iOS. And I really feel like, the moment I saw that they want you to, put this in a kitchen, I thought, why is this not on the even bigger iPad screen? That seems like such a natural place for these features to go. But, Apple is going to do Apple, and maybe next year.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it is surprising to me that it's not on the iPad. But then again, I mean, there's so many things like that, like widgets and the lock screen and everything that we haven't seen. We didn't see on the iPad right away either. The iPhone really is the proving ground for that stuff, I think.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And I don't know. I kind of want to. I need to rethink my whole stand situation now, as I really want to try this thing. I gotta. Well. Actually, no, because I think my sweet Anchor Cube supports landscape mode, because I think the MagSafe attachment, I mean, it's a circle, so it should work in any orientation. So I think I'm actually already set now that I think about it. Nice. All right. Well, that's it for the main episode. We're going to take questions from Discord members now for a few minutes. So if you're in Discord right now, think of your question, because now is the time to ask those. And John, you can take us home.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for joining us today for another episode of AppStories. We're going to be back again for multiple episodes, and we're going to be recording in Discord probably again tomorrow morning, right around this time. And I think we'll have a really special episode for you then. So try to stop by if you can to listen in live, but it'll come out in the usual feed as well. I want to thank SetApp for sponsoring this episode, as well as all of our WWDC coverage. And we will be back again, as I said, tomorrow. Talk to you later, Federico.
Ciao, John.